I think something quiet happens as life goes on. People fade in and out, not dramatically usually, just slowly. A friend from one chapter doesn't carry into the next. A version of your circle from 5 years ago barely resembles the one you have now. And in the middle of all that quiet turnover, a small number of people just don't leave. Not because nothing ever tested it, because something did, and they stayed anyway. Most of us don't actually stop to notice who those people are. We're too busy living inside the relationships to take inventory of them. So here's what I want to ask you. Who is still here after everything? Think about the people who were around 10 years ago. Really think about the actual list. Not the people you'd name quickly if someone asked who your friends are. The people who were actually, specifically present. Some of them made sense at the time. A job, a neighborhood, a season of life you were both in. When that ended, so did the closeness. And that's not really anyone's fault. Proximity was doing a lot of the work. You can usually name the specific moment that separated the people who were there for convenience from the people who were there for you. A move, a breakup, a diagnosis, a bad year that had nothing dramatic about it except how long it lasted. Some people quietly stopped calling around then. A few didn't. But a few of them are still here. Not because circumstances kept throwing you together, because they kept choosing to, long after it would have been easier not to. Maybe it's the friend who showed up at the hospital without being asked. The sibling who called during the actual bad year, not just the anniversary of it. The person who saw you at your least impressive and stayed anyway. Maybe it's the friend who sat with you through a divorce that made you a genuinely difficult person to be around for a while. Maybe it's the parent who kept showing up to things even after you pulled away from them for a few years without much explanation. Maybe it's the coworker turned real friend who stuck around after the job that connected you both ended. I think we notice the people who leave far more than the people who stay. Leaving is an event. Staying is just the quiet, ongoing absence of an event, which makes it very easy to overlook. There's something almost invisible about consistent loyalty. It doesn't create a memorable moment the way betrayal or abandonment does. Nobody tells a dramatic story about the friend who simply kept answering the phone for 15 years straight. So we build our emotional narratives around the exits. The friend who disappeared. The family member who let us down. The person who wasn't there when it counted. Those stories get told and retold because pain is a good editor. It cuts everything down to a clear, memorable plot. You could probably tell, in detail, the story of the friend who ghosted you in your 20s, or the family member who said the wrong thing at the wrong moment and never fully apologized. Meanwhile, ask yourself to describe, in the same detail, the ordinary Tuesday phone call from the person who simply never stopped calling. It's harder to find the words, because nothing about it was dramatic enough to demand them. Meanwhile, the people who actually stayed rarely get their own chapter. They just become background, assumed, expected, part of the furniture of your life, instead of something you actively recognize as remarkable. It's a strange irony. The more reliable someone becomes, the less remarkable their reliability starts to feel to you. Even though reliability is, statistically, the rarer thing. I think that's a strange kind of unfairness when you name it. The people doing the quietest, most reliable work in your life are often the ones you think about the least. And there's a version of this that's even more specific. Sometimes the people who stayed did it through a version of you that wasn't easy to be around. A harder season, a worse year. A period where you weren't especially fun or reliable or kind. And they stayed through that too. Not because they didn't notice, but because they decided the relationship was bigger than that one chapter. That's a real cost, even if it never gets named as one. Staying through someone's hard season usually means absorbing some of it. The shorter temper, the canceled plans, the version of them that had less to give back at the time. People rarely get thanked for the specific weight of that. Here's what I keep coming back to. If you actually made a list of who stayed, genuinely stayed, through the versions of you that weren't easy, through the years that had nothing special happening in them, it's probably a short list. Shorter than the list of people currently in your phone. That's not a criticism of anyone. It's just how loyalty actually works. It's rare precisely because it's costly, not because most people are unwilling. A shorter list isn't a smaller amount of love in your life. It's a more accurate one. And I think most of us haven't told the people on that short list what they actually mean. Not because we don't feel it, because staying doesn't usually come with a natural occasion to acknowledge it. There's no anniversary for "you didn't leave." So the gratitude just sits there, mostly unspoken, assumed to be somehow obvious, when it probably isn't as obvious to them as it feels to you. Let that sit for a moment. I'm not saying you failed the people who stayed. Most relationships like this run on a kind of comfortable, unspoken trust that doesn't need constant confirmation. But comfortable and unspoken can slide into invisible if you're not careful. And the people who are the least demanding about being appreciated are often, ironically, the ones who could most use hearing it. Here's what feels hopeful to me about this. You don't need a grand gesture to close this gap. You don't need to rank your relationships or make anyone else on your list feel less important. You just need to notice one person who's actually stayed and tell them specifically what that's meant. Not "thanks for everything," something with an actual memory in it. "I remember you showed up that week, and I've never told you what that meant." That kind of specific noticing lands differently than a general thank you. It tells them you actually kept the memory, not just the relationship. It doesn't need a special occasion either. An ordinary Tuesday text works just as well as a birthday card, maybe better because it isn't expected. I don't know who came to mind when I asked you that question. But I think you knew, quickly, without much searching. Which probably means they've earned it for a while now, quietly, without asking for anything back. Maybe you've assumed there'd be a better moment for this. A holiday, a big event, something that would make the gratitude feel earned rather than random. I think by now, you know how well that particular kind of waiting tends to go. Maybe the question isn't only who stayed. Maybe the question is simpler than that. Have you actually told them? Not in a card you'll agonize over the wording of. Just a sentence, sent today, while it's on your mind. You don't have to make it a big production. You just have to say the specific thing to the specific person before it becomes one more true sentence you were planning to say eventually. Maybe that's enough to start. And maybe noticing who stayed is also noticing who you've become to deserve that.